Okay, so I may have only read 20 books in the month of November. However, I read some really long books this month. We are talking audiobooks that are more than 24 hours long or in that region. So welcome to my November wrap up. Welcome back, or if you are new here, welcome. My name is Katrina and I make bookish content usually on this channel at least twice a week. Right now though, we are in Vlogmas, so I have a video every day for you. Hit that subscribe button so that you do not miss out on my future Vlogmas content, and leave me a comment about what you would like to see as we move further into Vlogmas. We have lots and lots of videos left to go, so if you've got something that you would like to see, tell me and I will make that video for you. I will leave my Vlogmas playlist linked up above in case you are coming to this later and you have missed any videos so far. In the description box you will also find all of my social links, including my blog and my Goodreads, where I've posted a lot of reviews of these books, and my Instagram, where you can keep up with my reading in between times. So my wrap-ups work so that we talk about ebooks, physical books, and audiobooks. Audiobooks is always my biggest chunk, and on this occasion I have an awful lot of books that I read this month that I read during the Gilmore Girls readathon week, because outside of that was when I read my long books. So the majority of the number of books that I read were in that week, and then yes, the longer books were read outside of that. So I will link that video up above when we start talking about those books, and I'll just direct you in that direction, because at the end of that video I have a whole wrap up where I talk about my thoughts on each of those books. I also have a video coming up for you which is a standalone review on one of these books that I had very mixed feelings about. So first of all, let's talk about those ebooks. I read One Snowy Week in Spring Hollow by Lucy Knott. This was the first book that I finished in the month of November. This has peppermint coffee and kind of people coming good and small town romance and superheroes, and our main character does not fit that mold of romantic heroine, and I loved that about this book. So if you're looking for a romance that's a little bit different from the norm and that has, you know, superheroes at cons in, oh yes, I put myself right in the Javits Centre at these cons, then that one is for you. Then another one that had a decent amount of coffee in as well was He Will Be Mine by Kirsty Greenwood, another romance. I like the colour of this one. It does nice things to my colour balance as I'm filming. This was another ebook that I read. The tagline for this one is a laugh out loud romantic comedy, and I definitely did laugh out loud at this one. Kirsty Greenwood just has a way of putting on the paper the things that we're all thinking. You know, when you're standing in line and you see someone doing something ridiculous and you think it in your head, Kirsty Greenwood writes it down in her books. So if you're looking for a rom-com that's definitely has the comedy in there, then this is one for you. And both of those are out on ebook right now, and I believe they're available here as well as in the UK. But I do have full written reviews of those ones on my blog. And then we have Sunset Over Brightwater Bay. We finally get to, this is really not good for the colour. Let's see if we can turn down the brightness just a little bit. We finally get to the ending of, is that a bit better? Yes, that's a bit. We finally get to the ending of the Brightwater Bay series. We get to find out who Mary ends up with, how she ends things. We get to travel back to Orkney. This is one of those installments that you can probably sit down and read in a couple of hours, so it's perfect for reading over Christmas time. But the bind up of this one comes out, I feel like I should know the answer to this one, soon. I will leave a link to it in the description box so you can see when it actually comes out, because this is out in 4 parts. All 4 parts are out now, but you will be able to read the entire bind up of this one, if not now, then very, very soon, and just not have to wait to find out what happens with Mary and another trip back to Orkney, because we could all do with a little escapism to Orkney right now, I am sure. But those are my ebooks that I read, so let's move on to the physical books that I read. And this is where I start to talk about books that I read during the Gilmore Girls readathon. So I will leave that linked up above so that you can actually, literally watch me read these. And I also kind of give you a review and talk about my thoughts in a little more detail at the end of that video. So if you're looking for more detail on these ones, click on that video, scroll to the end. You'll get all the info that you need. So I read and listened to Dandelion by Gabby Hanna. This is the follow-up to her poetry book Adultolescence that I read March, April time. And this one has some fabulous poems that I have marked with little life advice snippets scattered throughout. And I love some of the illustrations as well as some of the poems in here, and just the way that everything is set out. And then because this is the Target special edition, this one also has some extra poems and notes and scribblings at the back, which is very cool, and I really enjoyed this one. And then another poetry book that I read during that readathon was Pillow Thoughts number 4, which is the last book in the Pillow Thoughts series by Courtney Peppernell. I have a whole video talking about that series, so I will leave that linked up above, and then I go into more detail talking about this one in that Gilmore Girls readathon wrap-up video. Then on to the audiobooks. Audiobooks always make up the biggest chunk of my wrap-ups this year. Hasn't always been the case, but I've always listened to a lot of audiobooks. But this year in particular, I found it difficult to focus on non-audiobooks, and so if I can get my hands on the audio version of something, even if I have the physical or the ebook version of it, I will try and read the audiobook, because I know that I'm going to pay more attention to that, and my mind doesn't wander as much when I'm wearing the headphones, and I don't think about 2020 and everything going on in 2020. So during the Gilmore Girls readathon, I read the 12 Days of Dash and Lily, because in October I reread Dash and Lily's Book of Dares, ready to make a book versus Netflix series for you. We'll leave that video linked up above if I have enough links. If not, I'll leave it in the description box or on the end screen if you haven't already seen it. So I had to reread the 12 Days of Dash and Lily, because there is the new book out as well, and so I really wanted to read the new book, which is, let me find this one, Mind the Gap, Dash and Lily, and I did read both of these during the Gilmore Girls readathon, so I talk about them in more detail there. But I did both of them on audiobook, and it was great to kind of binge the series like that. I do recommend it, and I'm really excited to see what they do with Netflix with creating the TV series for the 12 Days of Dash and Lily, and then hopefully we'll get some nice London bookshop shots in Mind the Gap, Dash and Lily. I'm excited to see them go to the big Waterstones, Piccadilly or Foyles or anywhere else. It's very, very exciting. Then I listened to a collection of short stories. This one is If You See Me, Don't Say Hi. It's been sat on my shelf for quite some time. It wasn't entirely my thing, but like I say, I talk about it a little bit more in that video. But I'm glad to have finally read it, but I wouldn't say that it was my favorite book that I read in November, but I will be passing this on so somebody else can enjoy it now. But it was a good audiobook, I will say, but the physical book is very pretty because it has the deckled edges. Then I also listened to, I have a proof copy of this. It was given to me by a lovely librarian. This is Group by Kirsty Tate, How One Therapist and a Circle of Strangers Saved My Life. This is really fully tell-all, and I believe she narrates it, and so it was a very kind of interesting experience listening to this as I was driving along, and her going into very, very intimate detail about very, very intimate things, and being very open about her group and being very open with her group as well. But yes, it was, again, it probably, wasn't my favorite thing that I've read, but it was very interesting and quite different to a lot of things that I read that week and a lot of things that I've read this year. And so it was a good way to kind of add another book to my nonfiction November reading. And then I listened to I Wish It Could Be Christmas Every Day by Millie Johnston. And then during the week, I was also sent this beautiful hardcover copy of it too. So there you go. Gaze upon the golden lettering, and it's all embossed here. And the snow continues onto the spine as well. And then this is the back, which has more snowflakes and stars and all sorts of lovely things on it. And I enjoyed this one. A Christmas like no other, so they made it special. Basically 6 people end up stranded at this hotel in a Yorkshire village in the middle of nowhere. You know, I should have just stayed on the A1, but I enjoyed listening to this one. It's a Millie Johnston novel, it's set in Yorkshire, it's Christmassy, of course it's going to be fun. But yeah, I do talk about my process of reading this one in that reading vlog. And then a couple more books that I read during that vlog that I talk about in there. We have Greenlights by Matthew McConaughey, which is read by the author. More Than a Woman by Caitlin Moran, which is probably going to be on my top 10 non-fiction books for the year. Also read by the author. Then also during that readathon I read Period, It's About Bloody Time by Emma Barnett, also read by the author. And then I have The Body Is Not an Apology by Sonya Renee Taylor. I keep going to go with Renee first. And I listened to the Caitlin Moran, followed by the Period, It's About Bloody Time, followed by The Body Is Not an Apology, because they all talk about things in a very same theme. And so I was really like compelled to read those. They were all of them great audiobooks, and I really enjoyed sort of binging them on a theme, like binging on a theme, like back to back, like being a woman and having a woman's body and just being a woman and talking about it. And then I kicked off that readathon by rereading Talking as Fast as I Can by Lauren Graham, which was a great way to kick off the readathon, because she talks about the Gilmore Girls and she talks about the filming and she talks about like her life, and it was just lovely to reread this, having kind of recently rewatched the series as well, and then seen her in like Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist, and kind of seen her in the reboots as well. So when I first read this, I hadn't seen the reboots, and she does make allowances for the fact that the book came out around about the same time as the reboots were coming out. And so she does say, I'm not going to talk about these too much because I don't want to spoil it, because not everybody's seen them yet. And then yeah, on to some of the like really long books I read outside of that readathon. At the very start of the readathon, at the very start of November, I listened to Let's Do It, the Authorized Biography of Victoria Wood by Jasper. This is a 20-hour audiobook, so it gives you an idea of how many pages are probably in the physical book. I think I'd probably like to own the physical book just because it will have pictures in there and I could flick back and see other passages, but the audiobook of this one is read by people like Celia Imrie, Duncan Preston, Julie Walters, all people who you are used to seeing on TV with Victoria Wood. And also the audiobook has Victoria Wood singing Let's Do It at the beginning and at the end, and it was just a really special book. Like, Victoria Wood means a lot to me, and you know, still does mean a lot to me. It's not like she meant a lot to me now she's gone, and was such a part of my like growing up, and like a lot of my own humor is formed around like things that she did and said, and I regularly will quote her on a daily basis. So like if people don't know Victoria Wood, they'll just be like, why is she talking about like she can remember when pants were pants? Like what is that? But yeah, it's a Victoria Wood quote. And so I loved this book. I cried an awful lot at the end of this book, and the whole book was kind of had a somber mood over it, but I also like really enjoyed it, and I loved the way it was narrated. So yeah, I would like to own the physical book, but the audiobook was very, very special as well. But yeah, 20-hour audiobook, so not an insignificant number of pages. Then one that wasn't quite 20 hours, but very apt, since we had 2 branches of this particular fast food chain open here in Colorado, and people waited in line for 14 hours. People got in line on Tuesday for them opening on the Friday, and that last guest that was like at the back of that 14-hour line was going to get served their food at 2 a.m. and this was before lunchtime, obviously, that we were hearing this from like police. And this is a book called In-N-Out Burger, a behind the counter look at the fast food chain that breaks all the rules. So it was really interesting listening to this whilst we had those 2 opening. The third one here in Colorado is due to open soon, and it's right next to a really big shopping mall, right off the motorway, the interstate, on a busy road. I'm like, I don't know what they're thinking putting this here, because I've never seen an In-N-Out burger without a line. The first In-N-Out burger I had was in San Francisco, and you know, it wasn't a drive-through one, it was just a standalone, and I had to wait a long time for it, and I don't think it's worth the hype. But this was very interesting to read, and the fact that it's this like family owned business that's like, yeah, broken all the rules, really, really interesting. But they are like hot on their branding, and that is why people will wait in line. And if you saw the news coverage of this, the one that opened here in Aurora, you know, there was fights. Like, this is not a time for fighting over mediocre burgers. There, I said it. Okay, on to the really, really long books now. We'll just skim over the fact that I'm like, In-N-Out isn't all that. I listened to Disney War by James B. Stewart. Technically, I have been listening to this longer than just November, because this one I think is a 30-hour audiobook, and it's very, very fact heavy, but really, really interesting. So the sort of tagline is, once upon a time, one man ruled America's greatest entertainment company. This is the untold story. And it talks about how the kind of power in the Disney company and different parts of the Disney company like moved back and forth, and how, like, you know, Roy Disney was kind of ostracized, and people on the board, and people's decision making, and people just being like randomly fired. And this is all like right at the top. This is not, you know, cast members and employees further down the line. But it was some interesting listening. I tended to listen to this one kind of in bed as I was winding down, because it was, yes, a lot of facts and a lot of history and a lot of dates, and this person entered this boardroom and this person entered this office, and so it's not the most thrilling of books, but it was really interesting. And if you kind of are a fan of Disney, or have watched like the Imagineering story on Disney Plus, which I love that series, totally would watch that again, then yeah, I think you will enjoy that. But I think there's probably a shorter book that kind of does the same thing. It was overly long. I feel like we could have cut out some of those stories. I'm not sure why it wasn't edited down, or I hate to think what it was edited down from in the first place, because yeah, 30 hours, it's a long old book. And speaking of long old books, I listened to A Promised Land by Barack Obama, which I have pre-ordered on audiobook because it is read by Barack Obama. And you know, speaking of someone soothingly reading to you while you're ready to go to sleep, I listened to this one kind of all over the place. I went for a walk with him, I've had him in the car, I listened while I was in the bath, I've listened while I was in the gym, I listened whilst walking around doing things, listened whilst you know, cleaning and tidying and stuff. And because yeah, this one is a 27-hour audiobook. It must be closer to 29, because it told me it was 1 day and 5 hours. So yeah, it must be closer to 29. So it's the month of the super long audiobooks. This one was also fact heavy, and this is just volume 1. There's gonna be a volume 2. Michelle managed to do it in just the 1 book, but Barack's gone for 2. I will obviously be listening to book 2, and I say listening because I don't think I would like to carry that heavy of a book around. Again, probably would like to own a physical copy of it, because it'd be interesting to see pictures and to kind of flick back to parts that I would like to read again. But I think that if I was gonna like reread the entirety, I would go for an audiobook again. It was a good audiobook, again, very, very like fact heavy, but I will say he is the first person that has explained what happened with the banks and the mortgages when there was the kind of like financial crisis here, as he was coming into power. Basically, it was all bubbling away, and people have tried to explain it to me, and I've watched, like, you know, Michael Moore did a documentary about it, and I've watched other things about it, and never really understood why it went as badly as it did. And then he explained it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I get it now. Yeah, that's really bad. Why haven't the banks been held accountable? And it's interesting because he talked about banks that no longer exist now. Obviously, I was in the UK at the time, so I had no idea there was this like massive changeover happening. You know, I knew there was stuff happening, but I didn't know that there was this big thing happening in the banking sector. And now I'm like, well, I look around at the banks that there are, and like none of the ones he's talking about actually exist anymore. So yes, there you have it. I feel like I should have done a page count. Hello, me from the future here. I completely forgot that I also had a DNF this month. I started listening to The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman on audiobook, and the audiobook was so bad I had to stop listening. I can't remember if I talked about this in a vlog that I did, because I feel like I was reading this during a reading vlog, but maybe it was between vlogs. But basically every chapter I had to turn the volume up or down multiple times, so it wasn't just like, oh, that one's a bit quieter, let's click it up. Every other chapter was like 2 or 3 clicks of volume quieter or louder than the last. And so whilst it was interesting, I just could not put up with that, and I wasn't happy that I had waited for the audiobook for so long and then it just wasn't very good. I also have just counted my pages, which I said I would put in a text, but I just counted them. So during the Gilmore Girls readathon, I read 3,663 pages, and then outside of that I read an additional almost 3,000 pages, and so altogether I read 6,242 pages. Whether that is a lot more pages than last month, I will have to go away and find out. This is why I should start a spreadsheet at the start of the year, and you know, people are always telling me of reading spreadsheets that they know and love, and then I kind of start with the best of intentions and then it doesn't really happen. So there is my page count. Sorry for the interruption. Yeah, I read a lot in the Gilmore Girls week, and then I read long books outside of that, and that's how we sum up non-fiction November. Yeah, I did well for reading a lot of non-fiction as well. I was very excited about it, and I like non-fiction November as an excuse to kind of save up some non-fiction books. It's kind of tied for whether More Than a Woman or the Victoria Wood memoir, biography was my favourite, because they both affected me in very different ways. More Than a Woman was very much anticipated, and then Victoria Wood, I kind of didn't know it was coming and didn't know it would affect me the way it did, so that's an interesting one. Okay, we've reached the end. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments what your favourite book of November was. Did you read any non-fiction? Did you read any audiobooks? Does anything look similar to mine? Also, in the comments, tell me if there's anything in particular you would like to see in upcoming Vlogmas videos. I am happy to make videos on demand. It's got dark whilst we were filming this one, so I know I need to stop talking now. Make sure you are subscribed so that you don't miss out on tomorrow's Vlogmas video. It's going to be an exciting one. I will be back with so much more content for you in probably less than 24 hours, so hit that notification bell so you don't miss out, and I will see you then. Thanks for watching.